and welcome to a new episode of Hello World. Today we're going to talk about sustainable software engineering. So sustainability is of course one of the main topics of, I would say, everybody's mind. All the individuals need to think about, take care and act in a sustainable way. And of course most companies are doing so as well. I mean, if we look, most companies have sustainability programs, and I think nowadays they're not just programs, they're actually turning into really strong actions as well. But to be honest, I've never heard about sustainable software engineering. I haven't even considered that a software engineer would have to sort of think about sustainability in terms of how they build solutions. So I think that's kind of an interesting topic, and it's perfect one since we have a climate hackathon coming up that we are arranging together with Microsoft. We have invited an expert on the topic as well. So who are we meeting today, Goran?
So we are meeting Asim Hussain. He'll tell us more about sustainable software engineering and what it is. He is developer, trainer, published author and conference speaker with over 19 years of experience working with organizations such as European Space Agency, Google, and now he works for Microsoft as a Green Cloud Advocacy Lead. He is also co-organizer of climateaction.tech, whose purpose is to empower tech professionals to play their part to meet, discuss, learn, and take climate action. So, welcome to the show, Asim.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So you're a Green Cloud Advocacy Lead. What does that mean? What do you do?
So I'm part of what's called the Developer Relations division inside Microsoft, and kind of our function and role in kind of developer relations is to kind of help educate anybody around kind of various aspects of engineering and computing. And in kind of various different communities out there. I used to be part of the JavaScript team, and we would kind of speak to JavaScript engineers. I then led the EMEA, Europe, Middle East and Africa arm for a year. And then about last year, just over a year ago, kind of as a passion of mine throughout this entire time had been, it'd been green, sustainability. I'd been asking the questions myself personally for a long time. I'm an engineer, been an engineer for 20 years. What is it what's my part in the climate solution? Now, I do many things personally as a personal individual, but in the stuff that I do every single day in my day job, what is it that I'm supposed to do? And it turned out there really wasn't a lot of information out there, and kind of I essentially pitched for the creation of kind of a green cloud advocacy role, and really what it's about is helping to define and figure out what does it even mean to be a green application. Believe it or not, there's not actually one of the things I discovered being in the sustainability and green spaces, there's either no standards or too many standards, too many competing standards. So like defining what does it even mean to be a green application, and then also kind of advocating and educating the world on how to build green software applications. I work in the cloud division, but I work with other people in this space inside Microsoft, and we cover like everything from Windows, Xbox, to cloud, and kind of everything else really. Yeah, cool. That's kind of my role as Green Cloud Advocacy. That's kind of what we do.
Cool. So the sustainable software engineering is built on 8 principles, basically. Could you tell us a bit more about them?
Okay, so yeah. So really a lot of that started off from my journey, I suppose, into this space involved a lot of research. As I said, there's a lot said and done about sustainability in the tech space, but it oftentimes is a lot more based around, the conversation is really a lot more around hardware, as it should be, but the conversation is a lot more based around hardware, data centers, what is the sustainability of laptops, of mobile devices, because it is quite significant. The hardware is very significant, a very significant factor in kind of the carbon cost of devices. But there really wasn't a lot around information that a software engineer had to understand. There's several books, I've read them all, Most of the material was based around academic research. And so I spent the first kind of 6 months of my role really just digging into kind of quite in-depth academic papers and journals and speaking to professors and all these different people. And I realized after my journey that, I'd spent this much time and effort in discovering this stuff, but the next person couldn't. I couldn't expect other engineers to really put this much effort into it. And so working with a number of other people, we really managed to distill the things a software engineer needs to understand to be a green software engineer into 8 first principles. I can go through the full list, but the first 3 I'd argue, well, the first one is the most important, which is carbon. So when it comes to like sustainability and like the word green, like what does it mean? And I think it means different things to different people. The United Nations considers like 17 kind of sustainability goals. Even Microsoft, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about it on 4 pillars, which is carbon. When we talk about carbon, we mean kind of greenhouse gases and kind of climate change, global warming. Carbon waste, kind of reducing the waste that we kind of send into landfills, etc. Water, so Microsoft itself is kind of a large consumer of drinking water and safe drinking water for our data centers and cooling and features like that. So water and ecosystems and kind of biodiversity, kind of protecting the biodiversity of the planet. So those are kind of the 4 principles of Microsoft. But really, when it comes down to an engineer, like optimizing for 4 variables is really, really difficult. How do you write a piece of software that optimizes for all 4 of those principles? So we really narrowed down on carbon. And what we say, and the philosophy is this, which is kind of again another very opinionated viewpoint, which is that everything we do in life, everything we do emits a greenhouse gas called carbon, or carbon dioxide, which is kind of warming up the planet. So everything we do in life emits that carbon. It's very difficult to live a life these days which doesn't emit lots of carbon. Yeah. So we argue in green sustainable software engineering that the goal, our primary goal, is to build applications that for each gram of carbon that they emit into the atmosphere, we extract the most value out of that as possible. Basically, don't waste carbon. Your application will emit carbon through various activities. Don't waste it. And so when evaluating different choices, you should pick the choice, whether it's architecture or language or design or feature, pick the choice that emits the least carbon. And it's just an interesting way of looking at the world. Like, people don't talk about carbon, they don't talk about sustainability, they don't talk about things in technical meetings. Kind of our goal and our mission in this group is to really bring kind of sustainability and kind of these principles into the discussion. When my dream would be, when engineers sit around the table and discuss features, and when they try and prioritize features versus performance versus a cost versus a probability it might introduce a bug versus the risk of bugs, risk of change. That sustainability is just one of those pillars. Right now, it's not even in the discussion, and we want it to be one of those pillars. So you evaluate solutions based on, it might be faster, but how sustainable is it? I've kind of gone off target a little bit, but that's the idea of the first principle, carbon, which is kind of the guiding light for sustainable software engineering. Would you like me to go through the rest?
I don't think we have time to go through the rest, but I'm sure we can read about them anyway. I just think it's really interesting to hear, because as I was saying, to me it was almost something new. I really hadn't considered the software engineer's sort of role in this whole thing, because to me it's more been like a client saying, we need a solution and it should be sustainable in this way, and the value that it's doing, so to say, is helping being sustainable, but not the engineering as such. So I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's fascinating to see that it's being brought up the way it is right now.
And beside those principles, there are also 2 main philosophies, right?
Yeah. There's 2 philosophies. It was interesting when we were coming up with the principles, we realized that we kind of jumped the gun a little bit. We'd kind of like gone straight into, this is what you do, without actually talking about the kind of the bigger picture and kind of why are you doing it, from a human perspective. And the first principle is that oh my god, I'm blanking. Wow.
Your first philosophy, even.
First philosophy. Like, so the first philosophy is everyone has a part to play in the climate solution. And I think this is kind of a general problem that's kind of beset I think the whole kind of sustainability and tech community. And I suppose it's because it's the typical way engineers kind of tackle problems is we think, well, what is the biggest lever we need to, you look at a problem, you break it down, and you look, well, this is the first thing, the most important thing that we need to deal with, we'll just deal with that. And I think that's a challenge we've had in the past is we've only really spoken to a really small set of people, the people who we thought, when I say we, there's no we, but you know, the group we, the people that kind of we thought would have the most influence on sort of sustainability when it comes to tech. So, you know, the sysadmin or the data center designer or something along those lines. But the reality, and I think there's a really great example that kind of really demonstrates why we need to change how we think about sustainability in tech and engineering. And there's a report by an advertising agency called Ogilvy, based in the US. It was in 2010. And they tried to really kind of categorize and dig and analyze what is the green community, like who are they, where are they, how big is it, and they did an analysis, and this was 10 years ago, so the numbers would be different today. We suspect the numbers would be more polarized, but 16% of people identified as super green, 16 super green. So these are people who are fully aware of the challenges facing us in the climate crisis. They're facing it head on, and they want to work on solutions and kind of actively work on things. On the other end of the equation, I think it was 16 or 18% are what they call climate rejectors, and kind of people who deny that there is any problem in the first place. And what we suspect is that those numbers are increased on both those sides of the equation since it's 10 years. But what I say is that it would be really useful to me. Imagine I had 16%, the attention of 16% of all engineers in the world. It would be incredibly useful to me if I could direct each of them to the areas that we most need the help every single year. So if this year I could tell every single one of those 16% engineers, okay, retrain as cloud adoption experts and really help everybody adopt to kind of hyperscale clouds, and we can really kind of get the efficiencies that way. And okay, next year I need you to focus on databases. But that's not really how the world works. I mean, these 16% of engineers who care passionately about the climate are sprinkled in every single domain, in every single area, in front end, in back end, in user experience design, in database, in machine learning, in containers, everywhere. And so instead of having this story, so we need to have a story for everybody. Everybody needs to know, every discipline, every area needs to have advice regarding how they can do their area the most sustainable, because we're spread out. We're everywhere. Okay, so that's the first philosophy, is everybody has a part to play in the climate solution. There is something for everybody when it comes to green software engineering or green sustainable software engineering. Our goal is to get something for everybody to apply in their work. And the second philosophy is what I call sustainability is enough all by itself to justify our work. Now, it's quite tempting when we talk about sustainability, and kind of it's an uphill struggle sometimes, trying to convince people of the importance of this work. And we can fall back on kind of this really interesting, not collaboration, overlap between sustainability and green applications. And because green applications are almost always cheaper, they're almost always faster, and they're almost always more resilient. So in the past, we've kind of focused on those. We said, okay, look, let me build you a cheaper application. But really, I'm doing it because I'm green. What we're doing is we're flipping it around, and we're saying, look, times have changed. There are all these wonderful advantages to building green applications, but the reason we're doing it is purely because of sustainability. We care about sustainability, and that's why we're doing it. So when you describe yourself so that's kind of the two philosophies of kind of the green sustainable software engineering movement, is kind of everybody has a part to play, and we're doing it because of sustainability.
You sound like you're starting a movement.
I think we're starting a movement. Yeah. I describe it as I honestly feel it. I feel like we're selling a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, we're giving you a reason to get up every day and kind of another reason to get up every day and do your job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So could you give an example of a really good application where you've applied those principles and ways of working, if you just want to have something that is more concrete?
Yeah. So there's not, I suppose there's not kind of one application. Well, there are actually several applications on the web where you can kind of really clearly see each of those things being applied. A lot of the stuff is kind of applied on the server side and kind of back end. So from a website perspective, you can look at, I think a great example is Branch Magazine. If you search for Branch Magazine, it's created in collaboration with my community that I'm part of called climateaction.tech. And inside there, they have several features of a website which are carbon aware. So in times when the carbon, I suppose, to explain this, we'd have to understand the principles. But essentially, there's times when it's better and worse to use computing, and it reduces, increases its features depending on whether or not carbon is cheap or not cheap or expensive, but cleaner and dirtier times. I think there's lots of stuff that we've done, stuff we've done internally with Microsoft, with Xbox, and kind of making, I suppose, less of a user software, but the ability to kind of reduce the energy consumption of Xbox standby times. There's things we've done there. There's things we've done kind of on machine learning perspective. There's something called like homogeneous computing, which is quite interesting. It speaks to one of the principles of sustainable software engineering, which is to essentially use hardware the most efficiently that you can. And to do that, a software engineer really needs to understand hardware a hell of a lot better than we do right now. So there's various examples. For instance, Pierre Legrand in our Windows team kind of worked with the VLC, the video player on Windows.
Yeah.
And work with them to basically leverage the graphics processing unit, the GPU on your laptop versus the CPU to play videos, and kind of that's kind of an aspect of sustainable software engineering, and that reduced the energy consumption and the carbon emissions quite significantly. There's a great article about that on our software engineering blog, a sustainable software engineering blog. There's things we've done with machine learning, again, around homogeneous computing, kind of leveraging hardware in much more efficient ways, programming FPGAs instead of kind of coding, I forgot what FPGA stands for, actually. Programmable something or other.
It sounds like there are plenty of areas, at least, that where you can be green in your applications.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a hackathon coming up, right?
We do, yes.
So
a climate one.
Climate one, yeah.
Yeah, very excited about that.
It will happen in March, 22nd to 26th of March. Those 5 days, developers of all skills will work on the applications that will help out different NGOs with their challenges. And could you tell us a bit about your expectations regarding this hackathon? Like, what kind of solutions you expect to see there?
Well, that's the wonderful thing about a hackathon, isn't it? Is that it will break all your expectations. That's kind of one of the things I like about them. In terms of what I'm really excited about this hackathon, is that the collaboration with NGOs in terms of the challenges. So I'm really excited to see real problems for real organizations. So you can really see the benefit of your work, and you can see the person or the team of people who it will benefit quite clearly, or perhaps the animal population will benefit quite clearly. So I'm really interested to see that kind of collaboration there, and also just kind of I hope to get kind of a really wide variety of engineers, and kind of wide skill sets, wide experience levels. I'm really wanting to see kind of where that kind of stuff stacks up in the solution space as well. mean, that's one of the wonderful things about this stuff is that whatever your expectations are, the most delightful solutions, the ones that break them. There's a beautiful saying that I absolutely love, and it's called creativity is connecting the seemingly unconnected.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of this. That's what I think of creativity, when you take two things that you didn't think would connect, and you put them in an environment and people go, oh, connect them together.
It becomes something else. Yeah.
Yeah, hackathons are definitely a source of innovation, right? That's great. So
Perfect. So thank you so much for joining. And I actually look forward to seeing if we're going to have any sustainable software engineering that we could actually see in the solutions as well. Not only really fighting some or solving some of the problems, but actually being built in the proper sustainable way as well.
If maybe I should drop a link in at this point for people if they wanted to find out a bit more about the work that we do. If you go to aka.ms/SSE/learn, then you'll find what those 8 principles are, and you can go to a learning path that we created, and kind of it's about half an hour's worth of training and watching. And if you want to find out more stuff that we write about kind of on our blog, you can go to aka.ms/SSE/blog.
Thank you so much for joining us. See you around at the hackathon.
See you around.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. What are your expectations from the hackathon, Kim?
Well, I think I'm mostly excited about, I really, as Asim was saying as well, I love when it's actual use cases, because I think that brings so much more value. I think my personal experience from Hackathon is really the teamwork, putting different skills at work and making things happen. And I'm actually fascinated about how much you can actually achieve in such a short time. And they actually have a full week, which is quite long actually. So that's going to be exciting to see what comes out of it.
For sure.
Yeah. And you? Yeah. What are you looking forward to?
I'm sure we will see a lot of innovative solutions, as Asim said.
Yep.
So it will be a lot of fun.
So make sure that you sign up. I think we're saying a lot of developers all the time, but I'm not a developer, and I actually must say that business people do have a place to play in the hackathons as well. So even if you're not a developer, team up with developers and join. And there will be really cool streams the whole week as well. So there will be lots of things to follow and learn more about. So we're hoping to see you there, obviously. And otherwise, thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you on the next show. Thanks.